Hey everyone, let's talk about something really important, how and why the US decides to use military force. We'll be looking at some past events and why they matter for everyone, everywhere. Imagine if any world leader could launch attacks without telling anyone. Back in 2020, under President Trump's orders, the US military attacked 3 Iranian nuclear sites. This happened very suddenly, and not many people knew about it beforehand. Here's the big deal. President Trump didn't get permission from Congress or the United Nations Security Council, and legally he should have. These strikes really highlighted a dangerous problem. There aren't enough strong rules either within the US or internationally to control when an American president can use deadly force anywhere in the world. This legal gap leaves a massive loophole. It might sound old-fashioned, but our Constitution clearly states that Congress, not the president, has the power to declare war. Yes, the president is the commander-in-chief, but they still need Congress's approval before starting a war. The 1973 War Powers Resolution backs this up. This law was created after President Richard Nixon bombed Cambodia. It's designed to stop presidents from launching illegal wars. It specifically requires the president to get Congress's approval before sending U.S. forces into situations where fighting is likely. The only exception? If the U.S. has been attacked and the president needs to act fast to protect the country. When it came to Iran, that exception didn't apply. In fact, it was the opposite. After the attacks, President Trump mentioned that Iran had been threatening the U.S. for 40 years. Nothing he or his Secretary of Defense said pointed to an urgent threat that stopped him from getting Congress's approval. Keep in mind, using such force could easily lead to retaliation against the U.S. and its troops in the region, which unfortunately seems to have happened when Iran fired missiles at a U.S. base in Qatar. These strikes also couldn't be justified by previous authorizations from Congress. For example, there was one in 2001 against those responsible for the 9/11 attacks, and another in 2002 against Iraq under Saddam Hussein. So President Trump essentially claimed a power that the Constitution clearly gives to Congress.
Just as the president needs Congress's go-ahead, they also need authorization from the United Nations Security Council. After World War II, the U.S. helped create a global system where countries can't just use force against each other without collective approval. The UN Charter states that member countries must refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. This rule against using force on your own is a core principle of the post-war legal system. A country can only use force against another if the Security Council votes to allow it or if a country has been attacked. Yes, getting the Security Council support can be challenging, but it's a hurdle for every country, not just the U.S. In fact, needing this approval actually gives the U.S. a lot of power. The U.S. is one of 5 permanent members on the Security Council, and that means it has veto power over any decision to use force. This gives the U.S. extraordinary leverage within the international legal framework, an advantage it itself helped create. While no legal system is perfect, the UN Charter has really helped bring about one of the most peaceful and prosperous times the world has ever seen. President Trump fully embraced what's known as the Bush Doctrine. This foreign policy idea says that the U.S. can use force preventatively against what it perceives as a threat. This was the main legal reason for the disastrous 2003 war in Iraq, which was supposedly needed to prevent the use of weapons of mass destruction that, it turned out, didn't exist. Even then, President George W. Bush at least talked with the Security Council and got Congress's approval before starting that war. This crucial difference highlights a concerning precedent set by Trump, a move away from even the minimal legal engagement seen in previous administrations. Most presidents since then have tried to distance themselves from the Bush Doctrine. However, presidents from both parties have still stretched interpretations of self-defense under the UN Charter to justify using force in the Middle East against terrorist groups. They've also broadly interpreted Congress's 2001 authorization after 9/11. But President Trump went even further, launching a war that truly lacked any clear legal basis, either domestically or internationally. Some of the president's supporters, like Senator Lindsey Graham, didn't seem concerned about the legality of the strike, saying that the regime deserves it. But this is a dangerous argument, no matter what you think about the strikes themselves. And while Israel has the right to defend itself, that doesn't give it or the U.S. a blank check to attack Iran whenever it wants. The lack of effective legal limits on the president isn't just a problem for the U.S. balance of power and national security, it's now a problem for the entire world. The rise of authoritarianism at home seems to be leading to a kind of international authoritarianism. This means the American president could unleash the world's most powerful military on a whim without necessary legal review or oversight, risking unchecked escalation. In this case, after failing to get the easy deals he promised, Mr. Trump showed he'd rather use force than diplomacy and negotiation. His actions could encourage authoritarians globally to do the same, setting a dangerous example that could reshape our global legal order. When the U.S., a nation that champions the rule of law, acts outside of it, it hands a powerful justification to other countries. This precedent, this example of lawlessness, can be seized upon by nations like Russia or China to excuse their own military actions without international or domestic approval. We're potentially trading the judge's gavel for a clenched fist, moving from a world governed by law to one governed by sheer might. This isn't just a slippery slope, it's a direct invitation for others to follow. Stopping this transformation will require action from other nations and from Congress. Countries need to speak up together and denounce the U.S.'s unlawful decision to use force. They need to call for diplomacy, not force, to solve the dispute between Iran and Israel. In the long run, countries must find ways to work together to support the law, perhaps even forming a group to impose sanctions on the U.S. if it continues to violate these rules. Several members of Congress have criticized President Trump's unlawful decision to use force, but that's not enough. It's high time to change how the U.S. decides to go to war. As a start, Congress should immediately ban the use of federal money for any military action that goes beyond the president's legal authority. For too long, our lawmakers have allowed their constitutional power to slowly disappear. They must act now to get that power back before it's gone for good, and the world pays the price for our mistakes. This isn't just about politics. It's about the fundamental principles that keep our world safe. Speak up, share, demand accountability. This is about all of us.